Strand, but in the world. He's been featured in Forbes magazine, The Wall Street Journal, NBC, and many other publications. And now, the Expert Advantage Real Estate Show with Blake Sloan.
Good morning, everyone. Blake Sloan here. Awesome new show this week. All kind of stuff going on, and there's some craziness going on in real estate. We got some super bad news last week, got a little bit better news this week, and some interest rates helped us out. We saw a significant jump, like 16% jump in volume just this last 7 days in terms of new properties under contract. And so we'll talk about some local stuff, talk about some national stuff. A big article just came out that said why a big rate drop could bring a flurry of Thanksgiving home sales. And I totally agree. We've seen that already. So some positive news to share a little bit in that scenario. We'll go over last month's numbers here locally, we'll go over the weekly numbers at what we just saw in terms of the overall week versus week new properties under contract. That's some very, very good stuff. We'll go over the brand new market numbers in for last month. They were super shocking on last week's show. They were literally like day off the press. And so we've had a little more time for some more data to get put in there. And so we'll look at that data and see how it overall performed, but still down about 20%. We'll talk about what's happening there. We are seeing prices probably start to soften here soon. We'll talk about that, but thankfully they have it in that scenario. We'll talk about some national numbers. We had this on last week's docket, didn't have time to get to some major national news with some data showing sales have slowed down to 2008 numbers. And we'll look at that and kind of what's going on there. Also, I get this question a lot, and I'll talk about, some top reasons to sell your home before the new year. We're starting to get to that time period where I call it holiday brain. People will waste 2 entire months of time for 2 days, right? They'll spend 2 entire months just in la la land, not taking care of business, not getting things done. This is both agents and also, clients or potential consumers over 2 days. And I'll really talk about why one of the most emotional purchases anyone makes is their home sale or home purchase, and also why it really aligns up with this time of year. And that's why it's really important for some people to kind of take that into account, and also how you play the numbers to your advantage. And I'll explain kind of how that works as well in that scenario. So great news, interest rates. We did hit a 23 plus year high. Last week's show, they were over 8% 2 weeks ago. Came back down last week, and they're back down this week, back up a little bit. We'll talk about that. But here's the deal. We have the same goal we have every single week here for the past 14 plus years. And that's just to keep you updated on anything and everything real estate related here in the Myrtle Beach, Grand Strand area, also nationally. And it's one of those things that for most people, real estate's their largest asset. And so I just want to do the same thing that we hopefully do every week, is just bring value and say, look, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. Keep you updated. And so that way you can make better decisions in terms of what you do. And if you ever want to come back and watch or re-listen, you can always go to YouTube. We stream these live on YouTube. Just type in Blake Sloan Radio Show. You can also go on Facebook, look me up, follow me under Blake Sloan, or also under Sloan Realty Group. Every single week we stream those for you to be able to come back to share them with friends, family, whatever it may be. And also we really have a goal to help people understand the biggest pains that people make and the biggest mistakes people make in real estate is thinking that all real estate agents are the same. And it'd just be like any stockbroker, doctor, lawyer, like they're not the same, right? And so that's why it matters who you choose, because it all deals with people. And so we'll talk about that on today's show to help you make better decisions. Yes, and looking back, I pretty much sacrificed and committed the last 20 years of my life to that system and process, and really trying to disrupt the real estate industry and do things a lot different. I grew up in real estate. Mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandpa, grandma, entire family saw real estate. I grew up putting signs out my mom at 2 years old. And I always knew that's something I wanted to do and I could do very well at. And they wanted me to be like a doctor, a lawyer. And after college and playing football at Coastal Carolina, I just knew that's something I wanted to do and I'd be very good at. But what I did was I was a student of business and I looked at what people did outside of real estate. And so how do we have something that fixes all these problems, right? All these splintered agents that do things different ways, and how do you bring it where it's systematized? And I noticed that a lot of consumers were just very frustrated with the experience and how things went, and they couldn't really count on if they could get results or not. And I remember when I started out, my mom and I were at a Coldwell Banker, great company there, but it was me and 200 agents. They didn't care about me. I didn't care about them. And if anything, they were working against me. I get a new lead, they try to take it, right? They try to steal. I never forget, I said a name and phone number, and there was these cubicles, and I gave I said the phone number out loud, and the person that was across the cubicles got the information, called the lead behind my back, and tried to steal him. And I was like, man, this is not the type of environment that I want to be in and have, build a company in. And so that we said, look, how do we flip these upside down and create a system that is proven repeatable for consumers? And I talk about this every week, because no matter how affluent the clients are, no matter how many times they listen, no matter how many times they've sold or bought houses, they make this mistake over and over and over and over again, right? They make the mistake of thinking that all real estate agents are the same. And it could not be any further from the truth, right? It's just fascinating to me and just baffling why people make this mistake. And I think it's because most agents are very similar, right? They do the same things, but that doesn't mean you have to gamble with your largest asset that way. Like I mentioned all the time, and the best analogy is just like a doctor, a lawyer, a stockbroker, right? Some stockbrokers make you a whole lot more money than other ones. Some will lose you a lot of money, some will make you a lot of money. It's the same exact thing with your real estate agent, because there's so many nuances. And what most people don't realize, when you're selling a property, there's 118 different variables from A to Z. If each one of those are handled correctly, it's put money in your pocket. Anything handled incorrectly, it costs you your hard-earned equity. And one or two things happen. The property doesn't sell, which we're seeing a lot more of that now. They're sitting, there's frustration. Or they sell it and they leave $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on the table. I'll tell you a success story today. We put over $200,000 more dollars in our client's pocket than two other agents told her she'd get for a house. And it's a high-end luxury house, $200,000 more than she was told by somebody else. Multiple agents, not just one. Thankfully, she's an amazing radio listener and reached out to us and met with her. And that was $200,000 right there. And so just like any doctor, any lawyer, if you go to a restaurant, right, we've all had that experience where you go to a restaurant, things are phenomenal. It's smooth. You love it, feel good leaving. And you had other experience where it's absolutely terrible, right? Bad service, bad communication, bad food. And the only difference in those two things are the people. And it's just like this business, that's a service-based business. They're handled and executed by people. And so you want to make sure you have something that's in place that's proven repeatable. And what I did is I realized, man, the industry's broken. You have all these agents that are splintered. Me, when I was at the big box place, it was me and 200 plus agents. They didn't care about me. I didn't care about them. And I was trying to juggle all the balls. And so how 99% of agents operate in North America, you have one agent trying to juggle all the balls. So it's like having the same person at McDonald's do the front register, the drive-through, and the French fries at the same time, and then wondering why the food doesn't taste good at the end. It's simply impossible to execute at the highest level on all these things that need to be done for your house and with just one single person or even a husband or wife. And so I said, look, there's got to be a better way. We sought out. I looked at what real businesses did with systems and processes and technology. And I said, how do we bring that into real estate? And I spent lots of money on coaches and mentors and people outside the business and also consultants to help us figure this thing out. And so we created this thing called the Guaranteed Sold System. It's the only proven system that sells twice as fast and for up to 20% more money than traditional methods. And it works very, very, very well. And so it's one of those, I designed it. We copyrighted it, federal trademark and a lot of stuff that we do. And so we license other agents in other parts of the country, but it's exclusive to us here. And it works very, 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 very well. Anytime we sit down with somebody and show it how it works, it absolutely blows their mind because it makes sense in all the pieces that are not together with most people. And it helps make sure we execute the highest level. And there's two main things do that. Number one is a team of people, specifically a team of specialists. Each person on our team is a specialist. So they're very, 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 very good at that nuance and that specific task so that they can make sure they execute at the highest level every single time. If you look at most agents that's doing everything, they're what we call a generalist. They're just doing everything in general, which means they're not really executing at the highest level on anything. They're just getting lowest hanging fruit, the squeakiest wheel, and throwing it out there and seeing what sticks, which is why most of the time, why the experience is not very good. And so our team of specialists is broken down to every single part of the transaction. We have inside sales, which are VIP concierge. They make sure anything incoming is answered. Any calls to the for sale signs, any call to web leads, everything's responded to within seconds around the clock. And we have outside sales. We have buyer specialists who specialize in just buyers. We have listing specialists. We have an entire team of administrative people to make sure everything's executed at the highest level where they're basically able to have listing coordinator, closing coordinator, photographer, videographer, full-time graphic design, all that stuff's all in-house. We can manage those variables and we have predictable results on the back end. And what those are designed to do is one single thing. They give the client a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And so what we call is like stacking the dominoes. And so there's 118 different variables from A to Z. If I can stack all those variables in order and knock the dominoes down one by one in the right order, what I do there is I create small gaps. And I create a small gap at point 1, a small gap at point 2, a small gap at point 3, and you stack all those up over 118 of them. What it does is it creates a massive gap between us and everyone else, and it's how the properties sell faster and for more money. It just gives us a much bigger advantage where our business model allows us to outspend the average agent 100 to 1 from a marketing standpoint. And so it by far gets you more exposure just simply by the business model advantage that it does. And so when we have thousands and thousands and thousands of buyers coming in, we're able to use that and match those up to our sellers and actually get the property sold versus most agents just do the 3 Ps. They promise you the world to get the listing. Number 2, they put it into MLS. And 3, they pray someone else brings a buyer. And meanwhile, they're down the street trying to get the next listing because they're just trying to survive. And so the reality of the market, the average agent sells 4 homes a year. There's not a whole lot of money to market with, not a whole lot of money to eat with, much less spend in marketing or even really help you to get your property differentiated. And so I share that for anybody just to listen, to take that away and say, look, you understand agents are different. They operate different ways with different processes, different systems. And so if you're gambling with your largest asset, you want somebody who's a specialist, right? If you're charged with a crime you didn't commit, the last thing you want is the cheapest attorney or a brand new attorney who's only tried a couple of cases, or an attorney who only tries 3 or 4 cases a year and doesn't have very much experience, right? You want the absolute best, the most aggressive, the most specialized attorney in that type of law. And you should demand that same level of excellence when you're dealing with your largest assets, right? And so that's the one thing I want to put in people's mind to understand, and understand that's what makes or break the home sale on both sides. On the flip side, for buyers, it's a very difficult market right now. Rates are going up and down. Inventory is very low. And so you want to make sure you have a buyer specialist who can navigate that, understand the nuances to help you make the right decisions and walk you through step by step so that you don't get taken out by anything that's unexpected. And so we designed this thing for buyers called the Unfair Advantage Home Buying System. Gives you priority access to foreclosures, distress sales, desperate sellers, the absolute best negotiation and purchase price, as well as the home inspection to get you that closing table successfully. And so if you want to know more how they work, reach out, call me, 843-808-SOLD. You can go to blakesloan.com anytime. I'll be right back in a second.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. The real estate market is constantly changing. Now, here to give us more insight into this is my friend Blake Sloan of Sloan Realty Group. Now, I know certain programs make it a lot easier for the seller. Which ones do you offer?
Hey, Sean. In addition to our traditional program that sells your home for top dollar, we have an instant offer, the most known guaranteed offer program. We're looking at a large investment fund with millions of dollars. We're looking to buy homes in Grand Strand right now.
And what kind of return can you expect from them?
Here's what I'll say. Every seller's needs are different. Some need maximum convenience, and we deliver that every single time. Some need the most amount of money, and we have a program for that as well. We have a trademark program that nets settlers up to 5 to 10% more money than traditional industry methods.
All right, great insight, and thank you for this update. Call Blake Sloan today at 808-SOLD. That's 808-SOLD. Or online at blakesloan.com. That's blakesloan.com. And consider your home sold.
Hi, I'm Barbara Corbett. I'm excited to connect with Blake Sloan, the only real estate agent in Myrtle Beach that I recommend. You offer several options to home sellers, but really takes away the stress.
That's right. For sellers at time crunches, we get ready to sell it on a certain date, pay cash for the home was even ready.
That's great. And if the seller has a bit more time,
These are approved marketing plan to sell to the highest price.
work with my friend Blake Sloan and get the home sold on your terms.
Welcome back to the Blake Sloan Real Estate Show. Market update, all kind of stuff going on here in the market. We got some good news, some bad news. We'll talk about what's happening real time, so you can kind of, and this is so like a great example this week of why it's important to have 2 types of numbers, because you can make better decisions as a seller, as a buyer, and obviously our job as the expert here is to help advise our clients to make better decisions based on the data. And so I'll talk about 2 types of numbers. We have the new market numbers. They came out brand new last week's show. Since they've gotten a little bit better, because what's happening is it's real-time data. And so as sales get put in that happened last month, which is a few weeks ago, the agents are putting them in 2 and 3 weeks later. It goes back to what I was talking about. So like the agents, you have one agent who's juggling all these balls. They're doing buyers, sellers, trying to do everything themselves. What happens is they don't even take time to put the sold listing in MLS like 3 or 4 weeks later. That's why they're not calling the buyer back who called on your for sale sign in your front yard. They're too busy trying to get the next listing, do other things. And so that does skew the numbers a little bit. Usually about the 10th of the month, we can find the most accurate data. And that's kind of what we're looking at today. But we'll talk about, and those are closed numbers. So if they closed last month, which is October, they most likely went under contract around August. Most of that data went under contract 30 to 60 days prior to that. And then obviously it goes through the process of getting loans and inspections and all that stuff through underwriting, and then actually closes. And so if you look at it, what closed in October, it's great data from a close standpoint for like comps and appraisals and things like that. But it doesn't tell you the real story, what's happening right now. And so for that type of data, we call the front windshield numbers, which is, hey, what's happened the last 7 days and like what went under contract. And it allows me to have a real-time pulse. And we go over this every week. We've known that since COVID started. It just helps us. And a perfect example, like if you look at this past 7 days, volume up for properties under contracts up 16.3%, which is awesome. And so if you look at the last 7 days as of right now, 468 properties went under contract. It's a 4.23% increase from last week. Last week was 449, and it had 149 million. This week right here is 468 for 174,228,000. So a 16% increase in volume, which is awesome. And it tells me some of the higher end properties are moving because you only saw a 4% uptick in actual units, but a 16% uptick in volume. It shows me that some of those are the higher end, mid to high end properties. And so if I'm advising my clients, I can be a little more aggressive in our listing price, be a little more aggressive in our listing strategy. And so that's why the data use is so important. And you want to make sure that your agent's advising you using real-time data, not data that's 60 days old, right? And so great news, 16% increase in volume. If you look at properties over $1 million, 13 properties over $1 million went under contract the last 7 days, which is awesome. There were 96 properties over 500,000 that went under contract, which is great. If you look at last week's show, there was 8 properties over 1 million versus 13 this week. Last week, there was 59 properties over 500,000. This week, 96 properties. So it just goes to show you that that is obviously true. And my hypothesis there, you saw a big increase from 59 to 96 in terms of properties over 500,000. That's why you saw a 16% increase in volume and only a 4% increase in units. So that's great news there. Inventory is still climbing like crazy. You're seeing more inventory sit longer. That's why it's important to have a great agent. So for example, in last week's show, there was 975 active single family resale homes in the market in Horry County. We've been doing that for a long time because it's the most accurate data. If you count new construction, a lot of the builders don't put their listings in, or they put one listing in for 5 houses they have available. So it's very skewed, and it just allows us to keep a real-time pulse. And so in this week's show, it's 995 active properties, which is a 20 property increase from last week. And so that's great news. And it aligns perfectly with that national data and that national article that came out that said basically you're going to see a flurry of home sales during Thanksgiving as rates have come back down significantly. And so that's great news overall in that scenario. Again, anytime you're looking at a hot market, it's about $200 million in real estate going under contract in a 7-day period. This last week, we're $175 million, which is awesome. I'll take it all day, every day. Looking at the MLS close numbers, right? For anybody that missed last week's show, and the data is a little different this week because all that the numbers are finally in. If you look at last week's show, they're showing a 25% decrease in sales October versus October, right? Like year versus year. Right now, it's showing a 16.9% decrease. And the reason that decrease, got better is because that the sales got entered in that closed last month that weren't in there previously. And so now you're looking at more accurate pictures. So sales last month, 413 single family resale homes closed in October versus if you go to last year, there's 497. And so that's a great point. Price is still up, which is great. Median price right now is up 5.3% year versus year. And so right now it's $379,000 even for a single family resale home. Average sale price doing better than that. So average sale price not doing better than that. Average sale price up 2.9% at $465,519. And so that's just pretty much on par with where it was last year. And you're seeing those huge gains. We're seeing double-digit growth year versus year for prices. And right now, we're seeing that kind of flatten out, right? We're seeing it bounce around the last few months. I do think personally, we're going to see prices soften a little bit over the next few months as rates, if they stay higher, continue to rise. Because there's just an inventory keeps climbing. I watch the inventory count every single day. It's literally getting higher. Like I said, today it's up to 995 active properties. So that's just something to watch and see, though. The good news is inventory is still low historically. It's only at 3.3 months of inventory. And so right now, it's still a super seller's market. And again, That's because, right, that's what's protecting price, is because a lot of home sellers are locked in at 2, 3, 4% interest rates, and they're holding tight. Even though they may want to move, they don't have to move. So they're sitting tight. And what's happening is it's keeping inventory low, which is protecting price, because obviously there's a whole lot less buyers than there were last year at the same time or historically. One of the most important numbers though right now, and this is why you're seeing so many more homes sit on the market. Like I mentioned, inventory increasing week versus week versus week. So for example, this week, 995 active properties. Last week showed 975. The week before that, 914. The week before that, 874. So you can kind of see it go down, right, as we go back. And what's happening is it's taking longer for these properties to sell, and some properties, a lot of properties just aren't selling. And so this is a key number to look at. If you look at the average showings per listing, the average showing per listing right now gets 4.0 showings. And so if you take the average amount of showings, this is obviously tracked by how many people schedule showings, and it's through the showing software that our MLS uses. But you look at the amount of average showings it takes to go pending. So the amount of showings it takes to get a contract on your house is 13. So the average showings a listing gets right now is 4, but it takes 13 to get a contract. You can see the problem. And that's why the marketing of your property is so important. The way it's pictured, the way it's presented, the marketing reach that it gets, how many phone calls can be made on their behalf to help, push somebody to that property. That's why the agent you choose right now matters so much more than historically. Like in the past, you could just take some cell phone photos, give it to a brand new agent, and they could get it sold, right? And it would get bid up in many cases. Like now, the agent you have and the agent you choose matters so much more, which I enjoy, because now you actually have to be good, which is super important. So that's overall single family numbers. Looking at condos, very similar story. Condo sales down 6.1% year versus year. So 414 condos this October versus 441 last year. Sales price, median sales price up 8.9%, which is great news, at 245,000. Average sale price up 9.8% at 280,000. Supply still low. It's up slightly, but it's at 4.2 months, which is still a seller's market. Once we get to that 6-month threshold, that's where the overall buyer-seller dynamic switches. So anything over 6 months inventory means it's a buyer's market, and the buyer has the advantage, and we're kind of getting there slowly. Similar scenario from the showings per listing to the showings pending. Right now, the average condo is only getting 3.2 showings per listing, and the average amount of showings it takes to get a contract is 10.9. And so once again, that's the most important metric I would look at right now as a potential home seller, is like, hey, look, how many showings can you get to my property? What do you do to get my property exposure? How do you differentiate my property from everyone else? And so those are the things that you want to ask. And I talk about this all the time. We meet with sellers, right? And they'll spend 20, 30 years building their hard-earned equity in 15 minutes picking an agent. They pick them because they were nice, or they have the cheapest commission, or they're a friend of a friend, or the friend of the family. Like, look, you want to make sure you understand, like, you ask the right questions, like, what's your marketing budget? How many buyers a month are you bringing in? What type of buyers do you have that would like my property? What are you going to do to push my property, right? All those things are what matters. And there's small nuances that can really make or break the home sale, and also put extra $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 in your pocket. And also what's really important is, in a market that's changing so much right now, you want to have an agent who understands the numbers so they don't misprice your property. Like I mentioned, that success story today, the 2 other agents told her house was worth $200,000 less than we listed it for, and we got it under contract, got it sold, and put $200,000 extra in her pocket, just by coming to us and understanding the data, and obviously pushing the highest we possibly could for it. So that's a great example there. But if you're thinking about selling, right, understand, I think you're going to see the market soften a little bit if rates continue to stay high. We're seeing that as inventory climbs and buyers go down. We always know it's always supply and demand driven. So as supply goes up and demand goes down, that lagging indicator always is price. And so that's something that will come up here shortly. Overall, with that, one thing driving that right now is interest rates. Interest rates are great news. Last week's show was, so 2 weeks ago, 7.87, right? And then right around that was over 8% around that same week. I always do it on the weekends. Then the last week's show at 7.51. Right now, still staying low at 7.55, which is awesome news that's a 30-year fix, a 15-year fix, 6.91%, a 30-year jumbo loan, 7.87%, a 5-year adjust rate mortgage right now, 7.20%, a 30-year FHA, 6.89%, and a 30-year VA is 6.72%. And so great news right now. We have this small window we'll talk about in a second where there's a big opportunity, and I'll give that quote again. Big rate drop could mean flurry of Thanksgiving home sales. We're already seeing that with our overall Grand Strand volume being up 16% week versus week. So we'll take a quick break. Right back in a second with a hot buyers alert, success stories, and one thing we'll talk about with some new awesome data we got here.
WRNN listeners, Blake Travis here. As investors in real estate, Buck and I both know exactly what to look for to find the agent with the best tools and marketing to get the highest sales price possible for a home.
Tell the truth, Clay. Here in Myrtle Beach, that agent is our friend Blake Sloan of Sloan Realty Group. If you need to sell a home and buy a new one, ask Blake about his guarantee.
Get this, Blake guarantees to sell your home at a price and deadline you agree to, or he'll buy it himself. And since you know when your current home will sell by and for how much, you can buy your next home without worrying about getting stuck with two more.
There's simply no other agent in the market.
Dave, how are you looking on time?
Line up against what Blake Sloan can offer
Time.
you. So when you're looking to sell and buy, he is your guy. Read nearly 750 five-star reviews by Googling Sloan Realty. Give Blake a call today and start packing. That's Sloan Realty.
And tune in to Blake's show Saturdays at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 11:30 a.m.
Welcome back to the Blake Sloan Real Estate Show. Hot buyers alert. My team and I are working with a ridiculous amount of home buyers looking for homes to buy here in the Myrtle Beach Grand Strand area from $250,000 to $4.4 million. If you're thinking about selling, please reach out. Contact us immediately. 843-808-SOLD. That's 843-808-SOLD. One thing we do every week, been doing it for years and years and years, is put our money where our mouth is. And every week we share real time how many active home buyers we have that are looking to buy here on the Grand Strand that are on our website with their username, password, account. Like I mentioned earlier, our business model gives us a huge advantage. We outspend the average agent 100 to 1 from a marketing standpoint. Even today, this morning, add another $2,000 a month to our spend on Zillow, which puts us close to $20,000 a month just on Zillow alone, not to mention the radio, the TV. We have tons. The biggest one we spend is on Google. And so we give buyers from all across the globe, and our team makes 18,000 phone calls a week, or last week it was 18,000. We average about 16,000. We've been pushing harder lately. We did over 18,000 phone calls last week. We're matching up buyers and sellers. And so right now, real time active home buyers on our website, username, password, account, 74,119 active home buyers. That's not our database. That's not like how many hits we get. That's how many active home buyers with a username, password, account who are logging on, searching on our website right now. It's like right now I have Mary Dietrich from Santa Clara, California. I got Christy from Owings Mills, Maryland. I got Dan from the Bronx, New York. I got Chicago, Illinois, New City, New York, West Hall, PA, Staten Island, New York, Bangor, PA, Paul's Island, Jersey City, New Jersey, Norfolk, Virginia, Penn Laird, VA. We got all over the place. And so the reality is, if you're thinking about selling, the place you want to go is the one that already has the buyers in place. And so what our team does, we have software that reverse engineers the most likely buyer, and we call them over and over and over, reach out to them. They already know who we are. They like us. They're part of our website. And then we have software that sends it to them. We call them and say, hey, we got a brand new listing and match exactly what you're looking for. Do you want to take a look at it? They're like, yeah, because the software already matched it up to what they want. And that's how our properties sell faster and for more money than some agent just put on MLS and hoping that it'll sell. So if you want to be our next success story, reach out to us. You also can buy it out cash instantly. You go to blakesloan.com. There's an offer right there at the very top. You can do it in 2 seconds on your phone. Instant cash offer to tell you information on it. And you can do it right there. Really quick success story. This is one I'm proud of. This is one of our favorite clients we've had all time. Susie, a longtime radio listener, had a very, very high-end home on the waterway on the north end of the beach. She was basically a widow and found the very large property and the land to be too much upkeep for herself. Being alone, she built the house with her husband. They spared no expense in building it, and she was not going to sell it for any less than what she deserved. Thankfully, she called us because of our national reach for affluent buyers who can afford a $2 million house. We came in, designed a custom plan, launched our global marketing blitz, professional photos, virtual reality walkthrough, our drone tour, drove massive traffic, sold for anything else ever sold for in that area or neighborhood on the waterway to an out-of-state buyer for $200,000 plus more than 2 other agents recommended for her to do it. And the transaction is smooth. Now she can move on and be closer to her family in the other house that she owns in Atlanta. And so that's another example of the agent you choose matter, $200,000. And also, Joanna and Randy were moved back to Pennsylvania, had listed their agent for 6+ months, no offers, very few showings. They were very frustrated. Someone referred them to us. We came in, designed a custom plan, global marketing blitz, professional photos, drove massive traffic, had multiple offers under contract in 2 weeks. So reach out, call me, 843-808-SOLD. We'll see you back here next week, same time.